Mm. Like I tell you, like Skip Bayless, called him.
Micah Parsons just went nuclear on Skip Bayless live on camera.
You're just not a leader, Mike. I'll say this to your face. I'll say it right now to you via video.
Skip fired back with a 23-minute takedown. Now, explosive new footage of these two going at each other's throats has surfaced, and the internet cannot look away. Let's get into it. Micah Parsons goes nuclear. Now, for those of you who might need a little bit of context before we dive headfirst into this thing, let's set the table properly. Skip Bayless, upon hearing the news that Micah Parsons had been traded from the Dallas Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers, wasted absolutely zero time making his feelings publicly and loudly known. In what can only be described as a gleeful, almost celebratory goodbye, the kind of send-off you'd expect from a man who had been waiting for this moment for years, Skip went on record with what was arguably one of the most intensely personal and scathing takedowns he's ever delivered on any player in his long career. And before we even get to what Micah said to provoke that heated response, it's critically important to understand that Skip's criticisms of Micah Parsons were not new, not by a long shot. He had been saying for months on end that Micah was overhyped, that the league had completely figured him out after his dominant rookie year, and that he was not consistently impactful over the last 3 seasons. According to Skip, Micah was nothing more than a pure speed rusher with no real power, a player who had become a full-blown liability against the run, and ultimately, in Skip's own stinging words, a losing football player, gifted, yes, but unable to live up to the expectations that come with being paid like a franchise-altering talent. But here's the thing that makes this story so much more explosive than your typical analyst versus athlete squabble. Micah had been hearing all of this from a distance, absorbing every single word, letting it pile up like kindling just waiting for a spark. And that spark, that match, that moment of combustion finally came in the form of an appearance on the wildly popular Open Thoughts podcast with Funny Marco, where the conversation casually turned to how players feel about being criticized by people who have never, not once, set foot on an NFL football field. That question, as simple and conversational as it seemed in the moment, was all it took to open the floodgates in a way nobody saw coming.
So, I just finished playing golf, just heard the news about Micah Parsons gone to Green Bay. And my gut reaction, as you might guess, is good riddance and good luck, Green Bay.
That was Skip's original take when the trade first went down, the sound bite that planted the seed of this entire conflict. And when Funny Marco sat across from Micah and asked him how he feels about players holding in their thoughts, about biting their tongues and keeping their frustrations private when analysts come for them week after week, Micah made it abundantly, crystal clear that holding back is simply not something he's capable of doing.
How do you feel about players holding on their thoughts when you are in the league? You can't share your opinion a lot about things. Do you feel like that is good?
I don't care about that. I tell people how it is.
And then Micah was asked about the players who are scared, the ones who don't have the backbone to speak up the way he does, the ones who sit in silence while their names get dragged through the mud on national television. His response was the verbal equivalent of lighting a stick of dynamite and tossing it directly into the heart of the sports media ecosystem.
Like I tell you, like Skip Bayless,
Now, there are a whole lot of ways to respond to public criticism. You can take the high road, you can issue a polished, pre-approved statement through your publicist, you can let your play on the field do all of the talking for you. Micah Parsons chose none of those routes. He chose the most direct, most combustible, most incendiary path imaginable. He looked right into a camera on one of the most popular podcasts in the culture and told Skip Bayless, in the most explicit and unmistakable terms humanly possible, exactly what he thinks of him and everyone else who does what Skip does for a living. But Micah was not done, not even close. He continued his tirade by calling out the very nature of what sports media commentators do, labeling them as people who rage bait for reactions and attention, but would never, not in a million years, have the courage to say any of it to an actual athlete's face.
I wouldn't. I'll talk back
like
too.
you these Twitter finger.
And then he took it even further, going directly at Skip's career, his relevance, and the viability of his show itself.
I would be the same thing.
I'll tell you how it is. You suck. Your show don't work no more.
That is about as blunt and as brutally personal as it gets in the world of public discourse. But what made this moment even more explosive, even more loaded with significance, was what Micah said next. He challenged Skip directly, telling him to step into his world, to lace up some cleats, and try playing the position he plays at the highest level of professional football. before sitting behind a microphone and having the audacity to tell him how the game should be played.
Open thoughts.
Yeah.
That's why this is called open thoughts, because you just have an open thought of
like we trying to like tell you how to play the game.
And that right there was the crux of Micah's entire argument. The idea that commentators like Skip have made entire careers, entire fortunes out of critiquing professional athletes without ever having experienced, even for a single solitary second, what it's like to play the game at the highest level. Micah told Skip to come play in his position and boldly claimed that he could do what Skip does and do it better sometimes.
Come play my position, Skip, because I can do what you do.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do it better sometimes.
Yeah.
The internet, as you might imagine, absolutely erupted. The clip was posted by NFL insider Dov Kleiman with a caption essentially saying, "Micah Parsons went off on Skip Bayless for criticizing him," and it spread like wildfire across every major social media platform within hours. But as loud and as viral as Micah's words were, the real fireworks, the full-scale detonation, hadn't even started yet because Skip Bayless saw the footage, and he was not about to let a single syllable of it slide. Skip Bayless fires back with everything he's got. Now, if you know anything at all about Skip Bayless, even the smallest, most surface-level detail about the man and his personality, you know that he has never once in his entire life walked away from a confrontation. In fact, if there is one single thing that Skip Bayless has built his entire legendary, polarizing, decades-long career around, it is the willingness, the eagerness, even, the absolute burning desire to engage in verbal warfare with anyone, anywhere, at any time, about anything. So when Micah's comments from the Open Thoughts podcast started going viral and flooding his mentions and his inbox, Skip did exactly what every single person on the planet expected him to do. He went to his platform, he turned on the camera, he looked directly into the lens, and he fired back with a nearly 23-minute-long response video that was as detailed, as personal, as meticulously researched, and as unflinching as anything he has ever produced in his storied career. Skip opened his response by directly quoting what Micah had said about him, word for word, and then immediately issued a face-to-face challenge of his own.
And I quote, Micah said about me that I'm a Twitter finger afraid to say to Micah's face what I say to him on shows, on videos, on X or Twitter.
Skip was clearly bothered, deeply, personally bothered, by the accusation that he hides behind a screen, and he made it a significant point to prove that accusation dead wrong by referencing his recent face-to-face encounter with Draymond Green, one of the most confrontational personalities in all of professional sports.
You should check out that Draymond Green show that I did just a week ago here in Los Angeles. We went 2.5 hours, Micah, Draymond and I, face to face in front of a live studio audience.
Skip pointed to that Draymond Green sit-down as indisputable proof that he is not the coward Micah painted him as, that he is willing, able, and ready to have these kinds of uncomfortable conversations face to face, eye to eye. And then he proposed doing the exact same thing with Micah, a home-and-home arrangement where each man would appear on the other's show to hash things out in person. But Skip was not about to limit his response to a simple scheduling proposal and a defense of his character. No, he went deep, surgically deep, into the football analysis, and this is where the response transformed from merely personal into devastatingly detailed. Skip brought up Micah's playoff record as a Dallas Cowboy, specifically the startling fact that in 4 career playoff games, Micah Parsons registered a grand total of just 1 sack.
And I will remind you to your face, eye to eye, man to man, that for my Dallas Cowboys, in 4 playoff games, you had 1 sack. And it came late in a game.
And Skip did not stop there, not even close. He zeroed in with laser precision on what he clearly considers the single most damning, most indefensible piece of evidence against Micah Parsons, that home playoff loss to the very Green Bay Packers team that Micah now calls his own.
And in that game, you were favored to win by 7 points. And Micah, you no-showed. You completely no-showed.
According to Skip, Micah registered 0 stats across the board in that game, a game in which Dallas fell behind 27-0 in the first half and was eventually demolished 48-22 at home as the number 2 seed. For Skip, That game was the ultimate undeniable proof that Micah Parsons is a player who simply does not show up when the moment is biggest. But the criticism didn't stop at playoff numbers. Skip brought up Jerry Jones' own public voluntary comments about Micah being a liability against the run, saying that what Skip himself had been preaching for 2 straight years was finally confirmed by the mouth of the Dallas Cowboys owner.
And I stood and applauded Jerry Jones for trading your, because as I continue to say, over your last 2 years, you became a liability against the run.
And then came one of the most revealing, most jaw-dropping parts of Skip's entire response. The story about what allegedly happened behind closed doors between Micah and Jerry Jones in their final meeting. Skip claimed that in that last off-season meeting before the trade, Jerry actually offered Micah more guaranteed money than what he ultimately received in Green Bay. But instead of reaching across the desk and shaking Jerry's hand and closing the deal right there on the spot, the way Jerry Jones has always done business, Micah said he needed to talk to his agent first. According to Skip, that was the exact moment Micah blew it, the moment he lost his place as a Dallas Cowboy forever.
You're just not a leader, Mike. I'll say this to your face. I'll say it right now to you via video.
Skip was essentially arguing that Jerry Jones gave Micah every conceivable opportunity to stay, and Micah's inability to close that deal in that moment, to be the kind of decisive, trust-your-gut leader who looks a man in the eye and commits, was the fundamental reason he's no longer wearing a star on his helmet. Skip also pulled receipts from Micah's own former teammates. He referenced safety Malik Hooker's pointed comments on Keyshawn Johnson's podcast back in June 2024, where Hooker publicly questioned Micah's priorities, essentially asking the world whether Micah cared more about building his podcast brand or about winning football games when the run defense was historically terrible.
You fired back at Malik Hooker that just wish you'd said that to me face to face instead of on some podcast. And you got my number, fam. He said family.
And then there was DeMarcus Lawrence, who chose to leave Dallas for Seattle, and upon arriving publicly, said he knew for certain he was never going to win a Super Bowl in Dallas. When Micah tweeted at Lawrence, calling those comments clown shit, and saying it was what rejection and envy look like, Skip turned those exact words right back around on Micah himself.
No, really, Micah, it's what you look like. Rejection and envy is what you look like from a distance in Green Bay because you still want to be a Dallas Cowboy.
Skip argued that Micah is the one who truly can't let go of Dallas, that he regrets leaving more than he'll ever publicly admit, and that his fury towards Skip and others is really just misdirected frustration at himself for not getting the deal done when it mattered most.
Because it hasn't let you go. You know you blew it. And so now you're trying to blame me for it.
The message from Skip was absolutely unmistakable. You're not mad at me, Micah. You're mad at yourself for fumbling the opportunity of a lifetime. And the fact that Skip delivered every syllable of this message not from behind a screen or through a social media post, but directly into a camera, looking straight into the lens as if he were physically staring Micah Parsons down across a conference table, made it all the more powerful, all the more visceral, and all the more impossible to ignore, and there was still more. Skip went on to detail what happened when Micah returned to Jerry World in Week 5 as a member of the Green Bay Packers for a Sunday night football showdown against his former team. According to Skip, the Cowboys scored 40 points on Micah's defense that night, and 11 of Micah's own defensive teammates recorded more solo tackles than he did. Skip painted a picture of a player who was supposed to come back to Dallas and prove everyone wrong, and instead delivered a performance so invisible that it only reinforced every criticism that had been leveled against him. It was a systematic, point-by-point dismantling of the Micah Parsons mythology, and whether you agree with Skip's conclusions or not, you cannot deny that the man came prepared with every statistic, every anecdote, and every piece of evidence he needed to make his case. What this feud reveals about the game. Now, what makes this entire situation so endlessly fascinating? What elevates it beyond your typical sports beef into something genuinely worth examining is not just the individual moments, the profanity, the challenges, the personal attacks and counterattacks. It's the larger, much more important conversation this feud has ripped wide open about the deeply complicated relationship between modern professional athletes and the sports media machine that covers them. Because when you peel back all the layers of this conflict, what you're really looking at is a fundamental collision between two worlds that have been on an unavoidable course toward each other for years. On one side of this divide, you have Micah Parsons, a player who, whether you love him or despise him, has always been vocal, has always been willing to say exactly what is on his mind regardless of the consequences. And on the Open Thoughts podcast, he made it abundantly clear that he has absolutely no interest in being anyone's puppet, now or ever.
A lot of these dudes is puppets for national TV. If you want to be a puppet, but that's not me. I'm not selling my soul for a check.
That is a powerful statement, and it is one that resonates deeply with an enormous number of people. Not just athletes, but anyone who has ever felt like the system they operate within is designed to use them rather than empower them. The idea that sports media has become a machine that chews up athletes for content, that commentators purposefully manufacture outrage, craft personal vendettas, and weaponize hot takes just to drive ratings and engagement, that's not some fringe conspiracy theory. A lot of professional athletes feel exactly that way. Micah Parsons just happens to be one of the very few with the platform and the audacity to say it out loud, on camera, with no filter whatsoever. And when you look at it honestly from Micah's perspective, you can understand the deep well of frustration he's drawing from. Here's a man who has been one of the most talented, most electrifying defensive players in the entire National Football League since the very day he was drafted, and yet the dominant narrative surrounding him, a narrative largely shaped and amplified by commentators like Skip, focuses disproportionately on his perceived shortcomings rather than on his extraordinary, undeniable physical gifts. But here's the other side of the argument, and this is precisely where things get complicated, where the conversation stops being black and white and starts existing in all kinds of uncomfortable shades of gray. Former NFL defensive lineman and sports analyst Marcellus Wiley offered a fascinating and brutally honest breakdown of Micah's comments on his own show, and his take was not entirely sympathetic to the player.
Like, you have had impact. I would say Skip Bayless has had grander impact in his game than you have had in your game, and you are a beast.
Now, that is a take that a whole lot of people might not want to hear, especially those who are reflexively on the athlete's side in any confrontation with media. But Wiley's point was a valid and well-reasoned one. Skip Bayless, whatever your personal opinion of the man might be, is an undeniable pioneer in the sports debate format. He essentially helped create the model that every single sports talk show on television, every podcast, every YouTube channel now follows in some form or fashion. And Wiley went even further with his assessment, placing Skip firmly on the Mount Rushmore of sports media.
You are a monster. But Skip Bayless is Mount Rushmore, bruh. Like, I understand you don't like what he's doing, but it sounds like a lot of hurt.
And that final phrase, "it sounds like a lot of hurt," really captures the essence of what Wiley was trying to communicate. He wasn't dismissing Micah's frustration or telling him he didn't have a right to feel the way he feels, but he was suggesting that the way Micah chose to express that frustration, the profanity, the personal attacks, the defiance, revealed more about Micah's emotional state than about any legitimate, actionable grievance with Skip Bayless or the sports media industry as a whole. Wiley went on to make an even more pointed and penetrating observation about Micah's psychology. He noted that when Funny Marco asked Micah about his future, about whether he could see himself going into sports media after he eventually retires from the game, Micah immediately defaulted to talking about what he wouldn't do, what he refuses to become. Instead of expressing excitement about opportunities or describing a vision for his future, Micah led with restrictions and negatives, and Wiley saw that as a significant red flag about where Micah's head is at right now.
No wonder he turns that corner like that. That boy got some demons in him. That boy mad at something.
That analysis cuts to the very heart of something much deeper than a simple media feud. It's not just that Micah is angry at Skip Bayless for calling him overhyped. According to Wiley, Micah is angry at the entire system, angry at the industry, angry at the way the sports world treats its players once they stop being useful commodities, angry at the widespread perception that he didn't live up to expectations during his time in Dallas. And then there was perhaps the single most eyebrow-raising, most talked about moment of this entire saga, a moment that both sides immediately seized upon for very different reasons. When asked where he sees himself in 5 to 10 years, Micah didn't mention Super Bowl rings. He didn't bring up the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He didn't talk about defensive records or legacy. He talked about going to culinary school and becoming a chef.
Yeah, I'm good. I got this football thing of mine. I can go to culinary school and I'm gonna cook for myself.
Now, let's be absolutely clear here. There is nothing whatsoever wrong with having interests and passions outside of football. In fact, mental health experts and former players alike would actively encourage athletes to develop identities beyond the game. But in the specific context of this feud, in the context of Skip Bayless spending years arguing that Micah does not live and breathe football the way a truly generational player should, the way the Lawrence Taylors and the Von Millers and the great ones always have, that culinary school comment inadvertently handed Skip all the ammunition he was looking for on a silver platter. Skip used that admission to argue that football is not the be-all and end-all for Micah, that the game has always been a vehicle for fame and fortune rather than his true calling. And Skip even went so far as to imagine, out loud, what former teammates like Malik Hooker and DeMarcus Lawrence must have been thinking when they heard the man who was supposed to be the defensive cornerstone of the franchise talking about culinary school. So where does all of this leave us? It leaves us in a place where two immensely strong, immensely stubborn personalities have drawn their lines in the sand and dared the other to cross. Micah Parsons has made it thunderously clear that he is not going to sit quietly and absorb criticism from people who have never played the game, that he will go directly and aggressively at anyone, media figure, former teammate, or otherwise, who he feels is trying to diminish or disrespect what he has accomplished in his career. And Skip Bayless has made it equally, emphatically clear that he is not going to be intimidated into silence by an athlete's profanity or threats, that he will continue to say exactly what he thinks with the same unrelenting conviction he has always had, and that he is more than willing, eager even, to say every last word of it directly to Micah's face. Skip has formally challenged Micah to a face-to-face sit-down, proposing a home-and-home format, Micah appearing on Skip's show Arena Gridiron, and Skip appearing on Micah's podcast. Whether or not that sit-down actually materializes remains to be seen, but regardless of whether they ever share a stage, this beef is not fading into the background anytime soon. The honest truth is that both men have valid points buried beneath all the noise. Micah is right that there exists a fundamental disconnect between people who critique the game from behind a desk and people who risk their bodies playing it at the highest level. And Skip is right that the game tape does not lie, that playoff performance is the ultimate measuring stick, and that leadership intangibles, or the lack thereof, are a very real, very tangible factor in professional football. Whether you find yourself siding with the player or siding with the commentator, one thing is absolutely undeniable. This is one of the most compelling, most combustible, most watchable athlete versus media feuds we have seen in years, and both sides have made absolutely certain that the entire world is paying attention. And that ultimately might be the whole point, because whether this thing plays out on Open Thoughts, on Arena Gridiron, on X, or in some face-to-face confrontation that the internet will replay for the next decade, one thing is crystal clear. Given the personalities involved, this thing is far from over. In fact, it feels like it's just getting started. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.